welcome back to another edition of the podcast. And tonight is our Game Week 22 National League preview and predictions. As always, I am joined by Paul Franklin. Paul, firstly, how are you doing tonight?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Luke. Not bad at all. Looking forward to. Only got 7 to predict, haven't we, with the FA Cup coming up? So, looking forward to it. Good. Enjoyed the interview in the week as well with Stu. So, good work on that one, Luke. And let's hope you get good numbers for that, and we'll have a go at the predictions as well while we're here.
Yeah, we certainly will. Of course, we both had good weeks last week in terms of the actual predictions themselves. We both got 15 points, which we're very close to a record. I'm not sure if that is the record, even though we both got that or not. So I might have to go back and do a bit of research on that. But no, there's a lot of topics to discuss tonight. Let's have a look at people that are already with us very early on. We've got back where he belongs. Welcome home, Harry. Some things are just meant to be. So I'm guessing that does mean that it is officially confirmed that Harry Cardwell is back at Southend United. So that could be a good talking point. We've also got Lee with us, who's a Wrexham fan, still tunes in every week. It's good to see you here once again, Lee. And then we've actually got a Morecambe fan with us tonight. So good evening, Morecambe fan here. Welcome to the stream. Let us know what your thoughts are on the season overall, but more like the improvement. Has there been an improvement in recent weeks? Of course, you look at certain results and it felt like it was starting to click, but then it does feel like you're going back to square one. Of course, you've got a huge game on Saturday against Boston. We've got Kevin with us, who's a York City fan. He said, "Evening, fellas, great interview with the best manager, Sir Stuart Maynard." We've also had Jason with us, who said, "Evening or welcome, Jason," and Caroline is back tonight as well. Welcome to the stream, Caroline, as well. There's a lot to discuss tonight in terms of the actual topics. Of course, we've got FA Cup to kind of not necessarily give our predictions, but see which side we could see potentially could cause an upset this game week. Something I want to ask you first, though, is probably on Harry Cardwell, if it is officially confirmed now. Of course, was very liked at Southend United, not just in terms of his goals, it was more his all-round play as a striker. And, ever since that move to Forest Green, it doesn't feel like it's ever really clicked for him there. That's going back to last season as well. And, of course, now it looks like he's going back on loan to Southend United. Do you think he'll be that missing piece for them?
It's interesting. It is, Kavar. I read it on social media just before we came on air, to be honest, Luke. And, it's going to take time for him to get up to speed. I think that's one of the challenges that they can foresee, because he hasn't played an awful lot of football with Forest Green. An interesting quote from the manager, Kevin Mayer. He turned around and sort of said he probably didn't really want to go, but he couldn't turn the move down. So, it is what it is. Everyone's ambitious and wants to try and do the best for themselves. But clearly this hasn't worked for Harry Cardwell. So he's going back to somewhere he knows, someone who's managed him. He clearly didn't fit into Robbie Savage's plans. That's fair enough. And it's good of Forest Green to be able to loan him back, and especially to a divisional rival, if you like, someone who's looking to sort of push on and try and win the league. So, listen, I think it's a great move for Southend. I don't think there's been any disputing that they could do with a little bit more firepower. They've had a couple of injuries in that area. So, a good move for everybody. And it just really depends, I think, Luke, how quickly he can get up to speed and get playing again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see him and Andrew Dallas up top, because I'm guessing that'll probably be what they'll be looking to do potentially with Southend. I think it's quite a weird start to the season for Southend. If you actually look at their results, I think against the weaker sides, I should say, they're getting through those games this season, where in previous years, that's where they'd be dropping a lot of points and slipping up. I think there's only been one game off the top of my head where they've actually lost to a side that isn't inside the top 7, and I think that was Eastleigh, if I'm correct in saying that. So they've brushed up a lot against those weaker sides they should be beating. But unlike the previous years, their record against the top 7 has been what has really let them down so far. They get to beat anyone inside the top 7, and they've only took 2 points off all the sides that they've played in the top 7 so far. And it's interesting to see, because in previous years of Southend United, I've always seen it that, they slip up against the weaker sides, but all they have to do is be in the playoffs come the end of the season. And because of the record against, the better sides in the division, they'll probably cause a lot of sides issues in the playoffs. Whereas this year, I'm very confident Southend will still get in the playoffs. My concern is how well they'll actually do in them this season when you consider, how they're performing against the better sides.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's Stuart Maynard alluded to it. Anyone who hasn't listened to the interview, one part of it he stated was that they've won 6 games in a row and they can't seem to shake everyone off. It's that top 7 is really consistently hard, and we I think we can all agree that they're going to be vying for promotional playoff places and the semi-finals and everything else. It depends on that. One of those teams may drop off and one team may come into it, but that top 7 is looking really strong. So, the likes of Southend need to do what they can to keep strengthening. Clearly, Cardwell wasn't in the plans, as we say, for Forest Green. They've got enough firepower up top. So, Southend have acted quickly to get someone back who's familiar to it, who would have known about, getting to Wembley and being involved in that and it not quite working. So, yeah, it's a good move, and it just goes to show that top 7 is so difficult for people or for teams rather to get results and move away. They're trying everything they can to help them, and look at the fixtures on Saturday. Southend go to Rochdale, so another tough game for both of them to deal with.
I think that it's a good segue onto one of the topics I want to discuss as well, is actually who could break into the top 7, because we've spoke about it for a number of weeks now. It's very hard to think of potential clubs that can actually break into the top 7 that you'd be fairly confident will get in over those 7. We keep mentioning Scunthorpe as a side that are going to fall off, and for me personally, I think we're seeing signs of that recently. A lot of it is down to injuries, but unlike sides around them, I don't feel Scunthorpe have got the depth. I think they've got a very good starting 11, but when that starting 11 gets dismantled due to injuries, that's when I think Scunthorpe become a lot more vulnerable, and that is my concern for them this season. So, Southend I think will be in there. I think the other 5 will certainly be in there come the end of the season. So there's only one spot I feel up for grabs at the moment, and it's interesting to see which side could be competing for that. You look at Hartlepool at the moment. It just feels like with them, there's always something just going to happen there in terms of, although they're on decent form at the moment, that it'll just come crumbling down once again like it always does, just because of how the clubs run off the field at the moment and the overall atmosphere surrounding the club. I don't feel it's particularly positive, although they're 8th in the National League. I think the whole situation with Nicky Featherstone, who's done a very good job so far, permanent manager, the recruitment side of things. I think a lot of the fans, it feels like with them that at some point they're going to lose again and then they'll go on a very bad run and then they'll fall away again. That's just my take on them overall currently at the moment. And then you're looking at other sides around them as well who could potentially break in. I want to ask the live chat, who do you feel has the potential to actually break into that top 7 this season? Or do you feel that the 7 are kind of sorted now? What about you, Paul? Who would you say, when you're looking at the moment, could break into the top 7?
I'm Woking potentially, because they're on such a good run, and you need teams to get on a run to get into that, to break into that top 7. I generally, Luke, I'm at this stage, and I know we talked last week about it being, the Christmas New Year period is difficult. Is a tough one for clubs and teams and players and everything else. I'm really struggling to see who may break into that top 7, purely because there's already 5-6 point gap plus a game in hand, which makes it 9, 10, 11 points. That's a lot to make up, and I know there's a lot of games to go. But if you look at Scunthorpe, are they going to drop out because of their squad depth and injuries? Can Willstone sustain it? Are Woking, can they push on to that next level to keep going, or have they hit a ceiling now? Halifax has had a rotten start, and that probably hasn't helped them. They could have done with a slightly better start under new management. Having to sort of adapt to that. So, whereas the top 7, I think, they'll all play each other and pick points off each other. But I do think that ultimately they're going to take an awful lot of points off everybody else, and there's not going to be a huge amount of the teams below that top 7 will take loads of points off of the top 7. So at this time, I'm struggling to see where it might occur, but we all know through history and experience, Luke, that there's always one that has that late gallop towards the playoffs. Last year it was Southend, they got right the way to the final. And there's a team that always drops away. We've seen the likes of Gateshead do that in the past. So, it's a tough one because they're so evenly matched, that top 7 now, and there's such good quality that I find it difficult to think of who could break into it at this stage.
For me, I just think the top 5, I think they're certain, to be honest, when I look at them and how they've performed so far this season. They're all averaging over 2 points per game. And for 5 sides in the league to be averaging over 2 points per game, it's ridiculous. That basically means if they carry on in the same vein, come the end of the season, 5 sides are going to get over 90 points come the end of the season, which is just stupid. I don't think I've ever seen that in any league before. And then, you go to Scunthorpe, who are only 3 points off averaging, 2 points per game themselves. Southend, people may say they could drop out, but I've always got confidence in them when Kevin Mayer. I think they know what this league's about, and I've always got the confidence that they'll be able to hold on. Whereas Scunthorpe, first league season back in the National League, did they really expect to be doing as well? Probably not. Have they got the depth? When injuries kick in, I think from what we've seen in previous weeks, I think it's becoming apparent that they probably don't unless they recruit. And do they have the finances like some of the sides around them to be able to recruit? For me personally, I'm not too sure about that. Someone's mentioned here, they've said Scunthorpe taken 1 point from games with Solihull, Altrincham and Braintree. If they continue in that form, they're catchable. Hartlepool probably the best of the rest. And yeah, people will say that. I actually had Hartlepool in the top 7 at the start of the season. But with them, it just feels like it's so up and down with them, if that makes sense overall. There's not much consistency. Yes, they're on a good run of form at the moment. They're not losing many games, but will they win enough games? Are they going to look to bring in an actual permanent manager, which has happened before? Nicky Featherstone's doing very well at the moment. All it takes is for them to say, no, we're going to bring in a full manager, and then it's complete change of story. With me, with Hartlepool, I wouldn't have too much confidence in them breaking into the top 7 because just everything surrounding the club and the overall atmosphere. Fans are staying away from games, and it's a very weird situation, I feel, at Hartlepool, if I'm being honest, at the moment. Particularly when you see things that the owner's doing with Jeff Stelling and things like that. And I know it's based on the field, but, do you really feel that that's not going to have an effect on the players as it has done in the past?
I mean, you've got to look at Nicky Featherstone and think he's doing a great job off the back of uncertainty. They've had chopped and changed managers. They've got the off-field problems with the owner. I'm quite amazed. You look at Altrincham, they brought Neil Gibson in as an interim manager. They've given him the opportunity. He's proven himself. They've given him the job. Why the hell Hartlepool haven't done the same to give themselves a little bit of stability? I'm not saying Nicky Featherstone should or shouldn't get a job, but if he's in that job long enough, then surely, unless he's particularly not bothered about the job, or there's just no long-term vision of him being that manager, then he's just going to keep that hot seat until someone else comes in. But you would have liked to have thought that they would have got it done by now. You look at Celtic in the Scottish Premiership. They brought in Martin O'Neill after Rodgers left. Hold the fort, Martin, for 6 weeks while we replace him with a manager, and they've done that today. And you'd have thought Hartlepool would be doing the same. You'd just think the manager, I mean, if there's Hartlepool fans watching now, are they in favour of Featherstone? Do they like him as a manager, or would they like him as a manager?
He's a good player, a loyal servant to them, and then he's done a great job so far as manager. But it just feels like it's hard to say because he's proven it. He's doing very well himself at the moment. But prior to him, the form he's gone on with Hartlepool, everyone would say that is the cheap option. And I feel like at the moment, why they haven't offered him the permanent job, I don't know. I don't know if they're still looking to get someone out there. But if you're Nicky Featherstone, I think you'd be quite frustrated, wouldn't you? What he's done so far with that football club has been pretty good, I think, to be fair. And if they carry on in the same vein, they will catch Scunthorpe. But the issue with me with Hartlepool is over the course of the season, is it not going to come crashing down like it always does with them? They go through patches, I think. And someone's mentioned here, they've only lost 1 home game all season, but they've drawn 6 at home. And I think you'd rather lose more games and have more wins on the board than these silly draws that they're drawing at home, if that makes sense for me overall.
Yeah, it's sometimes 6 draws is 6 points, 3 wins and 3 losses is 9 points. Are you better off doing that? But then does that allow you to get consistency? We've spoken about Hartlepool and I suppose their relative goal scoring issues and troubles. Defensively they're not too bad. So they certainly got better under Featherstone, and there's clearly more to it than we would know from the outside in terms of why he may not have the job or want the job, and who they may be looking for. But I think for Hartlepool fans, they just need a little bit of certainty now, because they're certainly not out of getting themselves in playoffs, staying in playoffs, and making a bit of a push for it themselves, because they're the sort of club that should be, and we know that. And only a few seasons ago, they absolutely romped the league, didn't they? So they know what it's all about. So, for their benefit, they just need to get it sorted out. I'm sure the owner and board are doing it in the way they want to do it. It might not be favourable to others, but you've got to understand they're the ownership, and that's what they want to do. And I think the team are performing well on the field, and Featherstone's doing what he's been asked to do. So at the moment, sort of keep calm and carry on, but they need to get it organised.
But a Wealdstone fan who's come in said Wealdstone is playing the best they have played for years. Don't count them out. They are playing better than many teams around them on the field, staying below the Verda's best. I totally agree. The only thing I will say about Wealdstone and why I might be counting them out is, have they got more gears in them as the season goes on? And I feel that sides around them are going to get stronger. And if anything, as the season goes on, when injuries kick in, and you may disagree, Paul, particularly yourself, I think it's likely they would get weaker, if anything, because key players will start to get injured, potentially in January when it comes down. I don't think there's anyone in particular that EFL clubs will be looking at, but there must be some sort of interest in certain individuals because you're playing so well currently at the moment. But to be fair, I think they've proved everyone wrong so far, and why can't they keep proving everyone wrong? So, yeah, I totally agree. I don't think you can count them out either, to be honest, particularly, as yourselves who are watching the football week in, week out as well. Woking, their side for me, the question with them is, they had a slow start, and are they going to be able to make up for that by winning enough games? They draw an awful amount of games. They're very similar to Southend, I think, and can they make that up now? That'll be interesting. Solihull, consistency seems to be an issue in recent weeks, but I genuinely feel that squad is a top 7 worthy squad if they can get a bit of momentum together under Chris Millington. Of course, I particularly rate him as a manager, but they've been a little bit inconsistent as of late, if you look at some of the results in the last couple of weeks. And apart from that, off the top of my head, Altrincham, probably not, in my opinion. I don't think there's anyone who stands out who I think could break into the top 7. Halifax, probably not, I'd say, either. So no, there probably isn't. There's probably only Woking, Solihull for me, and who I could see breaking into the top 7 come the end of it, and Hartlepool maybe, but even them I think it's a bit of a big ask, to be fair. Anyway, with Truro City at the moment, from the completely different end of the table, I should say, there's been some exciting news. They've had American investors have come in. The owners have sold 8.3% stake of the football club to an American investor. They're called Dawn Sports and Entertainment, and the lead guy is Abdullah Ashraf. He stated that he feels that the club has huge potential to grow, and he aims to support them by improving the infrastructure of the club. You speak about changing, the momentum. He's also gone on to mention as well changing the momentum of the football club, the potential there. And I think his main aim, he hasn't really spoken much on the playing budget, but he's spoken about the infrastructure off the field, the training facilities. How beneficial could this be for Truro?
Oh, massively. And I don't know enough about Truro from the outside, but it may be that they come up a year or two early. But when the opportunity presents itself, you've got to take it and give it a good go. Not to say that they're not going to stay in the league, but I think it's a massive ask for them to stay in this league as it stands. But it's important from a football club's perspective and the fans' perspective of that team to see progress, no matter how small it may be. There's got to be those incremental improvements, and getting someone to come in who's a fresh set of eyes, who's keen to help with infrastructure, etc. that can only be good for Truro. There's not many football teams down there, so if they can get it right, the fan base could grow. They've got a new stadium they've just gone into in the recent years, and so even if they get relegated, I think it's positive because do they go hybrid? Do they go full time if they're not already hybrid? Does the manager go full time? He's not already full time. I don't know all of the facts, but those incremental improvements to keep the club moving forward and going up the leagues, even if they were to drop down, they then might be able to then invest even in National League South to get them back into National League, to then be better equipped when they come back into it, if they were to come back into it, if they weren't to go down, and give it a good go and do the likes of what Wheelstone have in recent past and Tamworth, is to then to try and get in and consolidate in the league rather than maybe yo-yo between the two. But listen, any football club that gets investment, there's always a little bit of a tinge of what's next. Are they reliable? Are they going to do what they say? Have they got the money they say? Are they doing it for the right reasons? And all these sorts of things. So we've seen so many ownerships in the past, Luke, in professional and non-league teams that it's shit or bust, and they end up leaving the club in a worse state, and they've left it. They sort of got it, and all that sort of thing. So I would imagine that there's due diligence has been done. And Truro fans are going to be happy the fact that someone's interested in their little football club down there in Cornwall, and hopes to sort of make them grow.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it, so I don't really want to speak about it. But speaking of ownership, of course, Morecambe today, they just don't get a break, do they, that football club? I know Scunthorpe, when they got taken over, they spent loads of money, and then just as the season was going on again, they were then looking like they were going to have to sell the ground, they were going to have to move to Gainsborough. But with Morecambe, of course, they got taken over in the summer, they thought it was all sorted, and now, there's talks of the owner having effects on, human rights. I don't know enough about it to be comfortable talking about it, to be honest. No. But, just overall, without going into too much detail, bit of a farce, isn't it, to be honest, when you look at Morecambe, just trying to progress. And
I mean, the challenge you got, Luke, is, allegations have been made. Those allegations have to be founded or not. That'll all be done privately, but in the meantime, all it does is cause gossip and rumour. It can't be helpful to the management and the team because they're still clearly trying to sort their own shit out, if you like, in terms of who should be playing where, and they're letting goals in, and they're not letting goals in, and now they're letting goals in, and the managers is new to the league, new to sort of first team football. So you don't want the distraction, and the problem you get then with the uncertainty is the atmosphere may change around the ground with the fans. It's difficult. Like you said, I haven't read enough about it. I'm not too convinced, too sure around what it all is. So from a perspective of a fan of Morecambe, they've just got to sort of keep their heads, keep concentrating on the team, let all those off the field matters be dealt with, however they're dealt with, and then sort of keep going on, because irrespective of whatever those allegations are and how serious or not they may be, or how truthful they may be, they've got an awful lot of problems on the field in terms of staying in this league as we speak.
Yeah, they certainly have, with the current manager as well. It just feels like there's more and more fans are feeling that they need to make a change there quickly because they're going to be cut adrift a little bit. And, people keep saying, that squad on paper, the actual ability of the squad, we've got to take into account fitness. I'm not saying I expect Morecambe to be, in the top half at least, but that squad, we've had people before that have come on and said that, that's probably, they've got players that can easily compete in League One, yet they're not performing. It doesn't feel like there's any good tactics there. It feels like there's a philosophy, there's a blueprint that they're trying to produce, but it's not working, and they're being persistent with it. And I feel like at the moment, they need to be a little bit more, don't know what the word is, how to describe it, but they need to be, I think they need to kind of hold their hands up. Look, we've made mistakes, it's not working, now let's move on, bring in a manager that knows this league, that will be able to get the best out of these players and just keep us up this season. Because if we're being realistic for Morecambe this season, with everything that's gone on in the summer, staying up in the National League would be, I think, a respectable achievement based on this season. Even with that squad, I think when you consider the noise and everything surrounding the club, even particularly even with the moment with what's come out today, to survive, I think would be a good achievement for Morecambe to be able to then build next season. But if they go down this season, then they're in the National League South, National League North, I should say. It's a difficult league to get out of that itself. Scunthorpe, it took them 2 or 3 years for them to be able to climb back up. It's not 100% that Morecambe will go down and come straight back up no matter how much money they spend. It's becoming stronger and stronger is the North and South currently at the moment. So the main aim, I think, is to survive this season. And at the moment, it feels like they've got a project there, and they're trying to stick with it a little bit too much without holding their hands up. And for me, that's something I feel they need to do. And I think, unfortunately for Ashford Johal, maybe it's come too soon. Maybe it wasn't the right project there, but I just think he's a little bit out of his depth. And, it's a results business. Yes, they're playing nice football at times on the attacking side, but I think most Morecambe fans just want to confirm that they'll be in the National League next season.
No, you're right. And it's how far they go down the line with him, if they're to stay with him. There's obviously an allegiance there through the faith that they carry and what have you. And it's great to see managements, from different cultural backgrounds, etc., being selected. But at the end of the day, as you say, that's got to be put aside for a time to say, right, it's a results business, Luke, and we need to get the best person for this job. And it appears that there's a lot of naivety with that management group that they've got, the manager and his coaching staff. Will they give him an opportunity to try and rectify it? Who knows? It's or are they happy to go to National League North? And I would suggest they probably aren't. They were in the Football League only last season, but at the beginning of this season, they didn't even have a football team to put on a field. So they've got to put that into perspective. So, they've got to be grateful for the owners for that. But are the owners naive? They're new to football ownership. Are they naive?
If I'm being honest, I think they're trying to stick with the current manager because of the football they want to play and all the noise surrounding that as well. And I just feel that they're just being too stubborn, and they need to just get someone who knows the division that's going to be able to keep them up. And, for me, he's very, very young, to be a manager, and he's not proving, everyone wrong and saying, look, I may be young, but, look what I'm producing. He's not producing anything. And in a dogfight like they are at the moment, we've always said, oh, no, the results are going to improve as it goes on, as the season. You've got to give it time. Well, we're in December now, and results haven't improved. And they're going to be cut adrift. Aldershot, they're 7 points adrift at the moment. Morecambe could very easily be cut adrift in the next couple of weeks. This Boston game for me, I think if they lose that, then if they don't sack him, then I don't think they will. To be honest, I think they'll stick with him until the end of the season, because that has to be a big enough warning if they lose to Boston. And no disrespect to Boston, but being at home, that's a must-win game for me overall.
Yeah, massive game on the weekend. They're at home, aren't they? They've got to start picking up points quickly, and this is a good one for them to do. Get some confidence in the manager, find a bit of form from somewhere. But yeah, I agree with you, Luke. I think they've got to be looking to change it up at some point before it becomes too. Aldershot have changed their manager, but that's it. Truro haven't. Gateshead haven't, Brackley haven't, Braintree haven't, Boston haven't. So, Sutton have. And look what Sutton have done. They've gone from the bottom 4 to 17th. Eastleigh changed their manager. Yeovil, they're mid-table. So, there's a lot more than just Morecambe in terms of should managers change or not. But I think in Morecambe's position, that they need to, the size of the club and everything else and the investment, I think they need to look at it maybe more than someone like Truro would. Or maybe not really Gateshead. I think Gateshead need to look at their management team, but Aldershot have already changed this. Brackley, I don't think will, because they're punching a little bit. Braintree are punching a little bit. They're doing well. Boston, there's a lot of Graham Coughlin's got a lot of credit in the bank, and I think he'll be okay. So I think Morecambe, are the ones that should be looking at changing their manager. without a shadow of a doubt, and possibly Gateshead.
Now we're going to have a look at some FA Cup games now. What we're going to do, if you get it right, not the actual prediction, because we're not going to do an in-depth score, but you're going to ask you, do you think there's going to be an upset or not? And if you get it right, if it's not an upset, then you get a point. If it is an upset, then you get a point as well. And we'll add it onto the predictions league to make it a little bit more interesting. The first game is, of course, your side heading to Grimsby. It really is a grim game, not because you've drawn Grimsby. Well, it is because you've drawn Grimsby, but that's only because you had them last season and you, of course, caused an upset there last season. Do you think you'll be able to do it again?
I think it's going to be difficult, Luke. They're not going to want to get done twice in 2 years by little old Willstone, are they? In all honesty, I'm not sure that we will, but I know for a fact that they'll go there and give it a bloody good go. There'll be 300 Willstone fans there getting behind the team. We've lost 1 in 10, haven't lost in however many now. In all competitions. We're going to go there with an awful lot of confidence and give them a tough game. I don't want to sound like a doom merchant, but I just can't see us winning. But I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong.
Nah, I don't either. I think maybe if you'd not played Grimsby last season and beaten them, but I just think they're not going to want to get beaten again by you guys. The next game is Sutton versus Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury, of course, sit 20th in League Two. Sutton still in the lower end of the National League, but based on recent performances, I'd fancy them for this game. I'm going to go for an upset. What about you?
So am I. Only because they got a new manager, a bit of a bounce, haven't they? They've done exceptionally well. Some might say, why are you going for Sutton and not Willstone? I just feel Shrewsbury aren't in a good a place as maybe Grimsby are, even though Willstone are in a better place than Sutton. I think you're right. That's more of an upset type game than maybe the Willstone game.
Bournemouth versus Newport. This is quite an interesting one because what would you actually class as the upset? Bournemouth, of course, flying in the National League at the moment, and Newport's at 24th in League Two. It looks like we'll be covering them next season, Paul. Do you see an upset if we're saying Bournemouth are going to upset them? Or
I think so. Yeah, I mean, out of those 3 games, I think you've got to go with Bournemouth, haven't you? Listen, Newport have just brought in Christian Fuchs, the ex-Leicester City defender that won the Premier League with them 10 years ago or so, and he's been coaching out in America and he's come. So he's got some coaching credentials. Tough gig for him to come into the EFL and have to try and make a team like Newport, who I think must sort of punch above their weight a little bit in that league. And so, is the FA Cup their whole intention and their focus? I would suggest it probably won't be. Yes, there's a 3rd round game on the horizon against one of the big boys, but do Newport need that in their predicament? Whereas Bournemouth would love that. There's the finances, the exposure, the fact that you keep winning and you breed winning and you breed confidence. So I think Newport got everything to lose and Bournemouth got everything to gain from winning. So I think Bournemouth will win.
Gateshead versus Walsall. I know Gateshead are doing a relegation scrap at the moment. Of course, in this competition, they actually went to League One Wimbledon away from home and won there. They're now at home against top of the league, I believe, League Two Walsall. Although, like Gateshead may say, well, we need to focus on staying in the National League. There's always a question at me about balance with the FA Cup. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing in terms of the actual league performances? I think if Gateshead got through, it'd be a good thing. It'd give a bit of positivity around the club and it could build that bit of momentum because at the moment it just does feel a bit doom and gloom at Gateshead. But, you look at their home form this season. I think they've only had 1 victory all season at home against the side, a league above, that's doing very well like Walsall. I can't see an upset for me. I'm going to go for a Walsall win. How do you see it going?
I completely agree. Gateshead are not in a great run of form. Walsall are in a great run of form. I think there's only going to be one winner in this, Luke.
Blackpool v Carlisle. Now, I do see an upset here. Carlisle playing against League One opposition in Blackpool, who've had an awful start to the season, currently occupying the bottom 4 positions in League One at the moment. I think Carlisle could go here and win. They went to Reading, they got the victory there, and I don't see why they can't go to Blackpool and win, particularly with the momentum they've got at the moment. How do you see it going?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm going to go with a Blackpool win. I think there's going to be one where, even though they're not playing too well and the National League team are playing well, the EFL quality or whatever it is that you want to describe them as will prevail. So I think Carlisle will succumb this time, and I don't think it will be a bad thing for them because they can then now concentrate on this relentless National League campaign.
Final one then, Brackley versus Burton. Brackley at home, 19th against 19th place Burton in League One. I think Brackley will make it very difficult for Burton, and I think there'll be another upset here. I'm going to Brackley win.
Does the game have to finish in 90 minutes or 120 minutes and penalties, Luke? There's no replays.
I think. Yeah, 120 now because they scrapped replays.
Because I was looking at thinking of all the games, that could probably be a draw.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm going to go with Brackley to win on penalties.
Fair enough then. Yeah, I could see that being a very tight game. When you think of draws and stuff, that is one that gives me the idea of a draw. One final topic before we get onto the predictions. Of course, Rochdale themselves will play for the final time at the Crown Oil Arena in 2025, as they were having to move to Accrington's ground for the next two home games, which will, of course, bring them to the end of the year. That is, of course, because Rochdale are set to rebuild the pitch once again, which I think is a very smart decision from Rochdale's ownership at the moment. Of course, it's been, I think, renowned that Rochdale have had issues with the pitch for a number of years now. It's had a massive, massive detrimental effect on them in recent years, which has probably stopped them from being able to progress. And particularly with how well Rochdale have been so far this season, they'll be wanting to make sure that there's nothing that's going to stop them from being able to compete for the title. And particularly with the football I like to play, playing on that pitch, particularly as it gets colder and it gets wetter. For me, I think it's a good decision to do this at the moment. Of course, they'll be away from the home stadium for the next two home games, but playing on a good pitch like Accrington's, I don't think it's going to have much of an effect on them, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on the whole situation?
It's a really tough one, isn't it, Luke? Because they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They don't want to start building up games like happened last year, Tuesday, Saturday, because that had a detrimental effect. They went deep in the FA Trophy as well, which probably didn't help that fixture congestion. And ultimately, they ended up not failing, but falling short of each thing. And they don't want to repeat that. So I think this is the lesser of two evils. They've got two games in hand. They're playing well. Accrington's pitch is going to be decent enough to play on. Are they sort of letting go of a little bit of home advantage? Possibly, but actually, where's the home advantage at the Crown Oil when you can't play at your home ground and you end up having to play a load of games in the spring? So, I think it's good. The only concern, I think, Luke, and we spoke about this, and would it only be two games? They've got to be pretty sure that the relaying of that pitch and the maintenance of it is going to go as they say it is. They don't want it then to be prolonged to 3 or 4 games and having to change home games to away games to accommodate it and everything else, because they need to be in the best possible position as a squad to go for this title because of all the competition they got behind them at the moment. They're the ones that are leading the race, 2 games in hand, top of the league. They're sitting really pretty. They just can't afford to have something like this derail them like it did last year. So, fair play to them. They've been bold. They've made a decision. They're going to go with it. And I on the face of it, I don't think it will affect them too much.
No.
We'll have to see that in reality.
Yeah, and it is if it gets prolonged, isn't it? That could be the issue, because it's not for certain that Accrington had let them play at their ground anymore. No, Halifax had a similar situation where we went to Accrington's ground and then we had another game and then we had to go to Chesterfield's ground. So, you don't want to get to that situation again for Rochdale themselves either, particularly with how well they've started this season as well. We're going to come on to the predictions now, the National League predictions, I should say. These are the current scores. 2 very good weeks for ourselves, very close to breaking records in terms of points. We've both got 15 points. That's the only downside, I suppose, is that there's not much of a gap because of that. Good week for both of us.
Well, I think that's the first time we've both scored as highly as that on the same week. And, I think you can be grateful to York City for scoring very late on to get your 5-1 prediction against my 4-1. That would have been the difference really when you look at it. So, but you're very close. I think there was another one where you said a team would win 5-2 and they won 4-2. So, I mean, you weren't far off that bold prediction as well, Luke. I can't remember what the fixture was now, but yeah, that's right. Yeah, Sutton. That's right. Listen, a great game week. I think we got a point on at least 1 point on almost every game, didn't we? And a few 3-pointers. So let's see how we get on. We've only got 7 games this week, so I can't see us getting as many as 15 points, unless, of course, we nail the actual scores. But they were fairly even last week. They were quite easy at times to look at, because the teams this week not so much. They seem more heavily favoured, personally, one way to the other when you look at them.
Yeah. This is how, if you want to play along, everyone, this is how you do that. It'll also give you an idea of how points are scored as well. First game that we're going to look at then, it's going to be Morecambe versus Boston. A massive 6 points, I feel, at the bottom. Boston on 21 points at the moment. Got a little bit of a cushion, but again, sides around them at the moment. These are huge games. Of course, what's interesting about this fixture is for 6 of the games, they've already faced each other this season on the opening day. And it's quite weird that, it's the start of December and we're already, on the second section of fixtures. I know there's probably about 2 games, isn't there, where you've still got sides to play who you haven't yet, but due to Boxing Day and how that works. That's why we're already on the second section of fixtures. Of course, in the reverse fixture for this game, Morecambe actually smashed Boston away from them. I think they won like 4-0. Can you see the same happening again? You're mute.
Apologies. No, I can't, Luke. I can't see. Well, no, I say no. I've gone for a 2-2 draw. Morecambe have got a bit better not letting so many goals in. It's not going to be often Boston score 4. Like you said, it is almost a 6-pointer, is it? I think more important for Morecambe not to lose the game and try and gain some points out of it than maybe Boston. But I think both teams will be pleased with the point. I don't think either team will want to lose. So I've gone with a Morecambe 2, Boston 2 result.
Boston are winless in 5, but their away form overall is pretty strong. I think it's like the 12th best in the division. As for Morecambe, it's a must-win game, I feel. There's a lot of pressure on them at the moment. When I look at recent fixtures, that Braintree game was an awful game. I thought they would go there, and I thought they'd have a bit too much for Braintree, and it just wasn't the case at all. They didn't even put a goal past Braintree, which I thought that at least they'd probably do that, with the forward line that Morecambe have at the moment. And, I know in the reverse fixture, Morecambe smashed Boston, but, Graham Coughlin is a very intelligent manager for me, and he knows more about Morecambe now. I think when Boston played them, it was a lot earlier on in the season when, they were a bit more of an unknown quantity. Whereas now, I think everyone knows how Morecambe like to play, and everyone's finding ways to beat them. And I think Graham Coughlin will set his Boston side up perfectly against Morecambe, and I think they might actually get one over on them and win 2-1 for me overall. Moving on to the next fixture, keep your predictions coming in, guys. I'll start to put them on the screen. The next fixture that we're going to have a look at is going to be Aldershot versus Altrincham. Of course, in the reverse fixture, it was on the opening day, and Altrincham beat Aldershot by 3-2. Aldershot need a win. It feels like now, after a tough run of fixtures, of course, struggled in all of those. Played a lot. I think they played almost everyone inside the top 7 and some. Altrincham is a bit more of a winnable game, but once again, like that Woking game, they're playing Altrincham at a very bad time. They've just, defeated Scunthorpe. I think they've had 1 defeat in the last 4, last 5 probably as well. Neil Gibson's had an excellent start there. It's a bad time for Aldershot to be playing them, but if you actually look at their performances, it might not look like it, but against York, they played pretty well for large periods. They just fell off later on in the game. Do you think Aldershot's bad run of form is going to come to an end, Paul?
No, I think they're going to lose. I think I've got Altrincham 3, Aldershot 1. I mean, Luke, on reflection, when, as you say, when you look at it, in the last 5 games, Aldershot have had to play Bournemouth, Forest Green, Rochdale, Woking, and York.
Oh dear. We'll get your predictions in quickly anyway. But yeah, these are what people are saying anyway. Go on, Paul.
Yeah, sorry. Someone went at the front door, so
I'm not issue anymore because I'm in a uni apartment, so all I've got to be scared about is like people playing loud music or something like that.
Oh, so apologies, everyone. 2 little sausage dogs waiting, seeing their. My wife's just come home, so just seen her at the window and gone mad. So, I mean, I was saying that you look at Aldershot, who they've had to play in the last 5. That is a dreadful set of fixtures when you're absolutely full. Who let the dogs out? They're full of. They're not full of confidence. They've had to change their manager, but on the other hand, Altrincham have managed to get a good result against Scunthorpe from sort of got a win from the clutches of defeat in the last few minutes. Neil Gibson's coming as a player manager. I've gone with Shots 1, Altrincham 3.
I think Aldershot are due a result. They played pretty well against York. They played well against Rochdale. They played well against Forest Green, yet they haven't picked anything out of those games. I think Altringham's probably a more realistic game, and there's got to be a point where they pick up a result. John Coleman is a very respectable manager, and he's not been gifted well with the fixtures, but I think a lot of people felt Aldershot might have been able to cause an upset in 1 or 2 of those games, and it's not been the case at all for Aldershot. Even coming up, the fixtures are more winnable, but they're playing an informed Altrincham side. They've then got to face Eastleigh away from home, Boston away from home, and Sutton away from home, and they've not even got a run of home games to be able to get a bit of momentum together. The fixtures have been cruel to them so far, but they've got to start picking results up at some point, and I do think they might be able to get a point against Altrincham. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this game. Moving on to the next fixture that we'll look at, it's going to be my side, FC Halifax Town versus Braintree. Braintree looking to survive this season. Halifax just very inconsistent at the moment. They need to find a good run of form to be able to try climb back towards the playoffs, because at the moment it doesn't feel like they've got the ability to. Braintree at home, though, I think it's a winnable game. They defeated Solihull a couple of weeks ago. They've been a lot better at home this season than what they've been in previous years, and I think they'll be pretty good against Braintree. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Halifax win. How do you see it going?
I've gone for exactly the same, Luke. I think you're right. It's Braintree have done what they've had to do in the last 3 games. They've beaten Morecambe, they've beaten Truro, who they would want to beat in that sort of mini league at the bottom. They've nicked a draw out of a off-form Scunthorpe, so 7 out of 9 points is good for Braintree. But going to play Halifax is a different kettle of fish. I think Halifax going to want to get back to winning ways. It'll be a tough game, I think, for Halifax. But I'm with you. I think Halifax will win this 2-0.
It's interesting to mention as well, in the reverse fixture, Braintree absolutely smashed Halifax on the opening day. But like I mentioned with the Boston Morecambe game, I think it's a bit of a different story now. Halifax are probably more established and more settled under the new manager, and I think they'll be able to get through this one 2-0 to Halifax. Next fixture is Forest Rovers versus Solihull. Of course, a draw in the reverse fixture. And I'm going to go for another draw as well. Solihull under a new manager, I think will be pretty good against the better sides in the division for me overall. Forest Green still going strong, defeated Southend. But like I've said, I like the look of Solihull. I think on paper, they're probably the side that I feel if they can get a bit of consistency together, I think they've got the ability and quality in that squad to be able to break into the top 7. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 3-1 Forest Green win. Forest Green at home. I saw Solihull at the weekend play the Stones. I wasn't overly convinced on them on the day. I obviously saw Forest Green recently where Willstone managed to get a draw out of them, and they're a good football team. They play on the front foot. Robbie Savage was very frustrated in his own team's performance in as much as not doing what he probably was asking them to do. I just can see Forest Green just being a little bit too strong. Having seen both teams in recent weeks, I think Forest Green are going to be too strong for Solihull and will win 3-1.
Next fixture that we'll look at is going to be Hartlepool versus Yeovil. It screams a draw to me. Yeovil have drawn a lot of games, so have Hartlepool. I think the reverse, was it Hartlepool who came, I think actually defeated Yeovil at Hewish Park early on in the season, if I'm trying to remember right. We'll find out in a second anyway. But, Hartlepool have drawn an awful amount of games at home. Don't lose many, only the one defeat at home. But, of course, no, it was actually a 0-0 draw. But, of course, themselves not winning enough games. They've drawn 6 of the 11 home games. So they've actually only won 4 home games all season. Against Yeovil, who I think draw a lot themselves as well. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for me. Of course, Yeovil under a new manager now.
Yeah, I looked at this and I had similar sort of sentiments. I have gone with a Hartlepool 2-1 win. Yeovil have got this new young manager in, and hopefully they'll be able to sort of play a bit more of an attacking type of game. They've got it on paper. They've got the strikers to do it. They just can't score goals, Yeovil, can they? Hartlepool are on a really good run of form, as we've talked about under Nicky Featherstone. They are starting to score a few more goals. And I think because of that, Hartlepool also being at home, I've gone with a Hartlepool 2-1 win.
Next fixture that we'll take a look at is going to be Scunthorpe versus Tamworth. Of course, in the reverse fixture, Scunthorpe defeated Tamworth away from home. I remember that game because I backed Tamworth to actually beat Scunthorpe and on the opening day, and it wasn't the case at all. And I suppose that was the start of Scunthorpe's epic run, wasn't it? On the opening day. Scunthorpe have had a few injury problems as of late. Cal Roberts has been out injured. There's the potential for him to start on the bench, but as I've mentioned, when you're having injury problems at the moment, particularly with Scunthorpe's squad, I don't think they've got the depth to be strong enough to keep on the form that they were a couple of weeks ago. Like I've mentioned, I think they're going to go on a bad run of form like they're showing at the moment. Against a Tamworth side that were very lucky against Carlisle, nearly deserved something in that game, and I think they might win this one as well. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Tamworth win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a Scunthorpe 1-0. I mean, technically we should go. Well, you've gone for a 2-1 because the last 3 results Tamworth have played has been 2-1, Luke. And when we talked about the teams that could get into the playoffs and were doing well, only a few weeks ago, Tamworth were knocking on that door a little bit. They have really slipped away, haven't they? One in 5. I know Scunthorpe again have had a mixed bag, few injuries, lost the last game against all in the last minute. They're going to be smarting from off the back of that. They're being 2-1 up with almost injury time to go and lose 4-2. Lose 4-2, etc. That's not going to sit pretty with Scunthorpe. So I've gone Scunthorpe will bounce back and they're going to win 1-0.
Final fixture, I believe, that we're looking at for this game week is going to be Carlisle's on Tuesday night. So we won't preview that one. But
Rochdale, Southend?
Southend, yeah, if I can find it. We'll start discussing it anyway. What's your take on this game? Potentially the fixture of the game week.
A high-scoring game, I think.
Really?
I've gone with Rochdale 3, Southend 2. Yeah.
Southend, of course, themselves have had a lot of injury issues, haven't they, recently, particularly at the back, which I think's had an effect on them. But their record against the better sides has been appalling so far this season. And as you've mentioned, Rochdale 3-2 then for yourself.
Yeah, I think so. I think a good game. I think this is, Southend are a really good National League side, aren't they? Physical, strong, got good wingers. Cardwell's back. Rochdale, the last game at their Spotland until they before the pitch is ripped up, so they want to leave on a winning note. I should imagine to get them to Accrington on a winning note. They've also got to look at it, Luke. Is they're currently on the same number of points as Carlisle. Carlisle aren't playing. They could then get 3 points ahead of Carlisle. York aren't playing. They get 4 points ahead of them with one game in hand only. And we always talk about having points on the board is probably sometimes better than games in hand. So if they win the game, they stretch that lead over the two teams below them that aren't playing, and then they've got to look at the potential of the other teams dropping points potentially. Boreham Wood aren't playing, so they gain another game on them and stretch away from them. Forest Green are the only ones that can really affect them. And could go top. So I think there's a lot for Rochdale to sort of gain from winning at this point. Again, the same as Southend. They'll just want to try and get themselves consolidated into that sixth position above Scunthorpe if they can, and try and get on the tails of the likes of Boreham Wood, who have, from Boreham Wood up, there's that that little bit of 7, 8, 9 point gap. So a huge amount for both teams on this weekend in particular. But I think Rochdale will prevail 3-2.
I've gone 2-0 to Rochdale for this one. As I've said, Southend had an awful record against the better sides, had a lot of defensive issues at the moment, with a lot of key players out injured, and that is something that Southend are renowned for, being strong defensively. And when you're reliable centre halves are out injured, it takes time, I think, to be able for other players to be able to come in and find that strong partnership. And with injuries at the moment against the Rochdale side, with some of the strikers and wingers that they got, it's not the fixture I'd be wanting if I was a Southend player with or Southend fan with all the injuries that they've currently got at the back. Huge game week for Rochdale as well themselves. I think it's probably the first time that they've had actually a game where they're playing in Carlisle and York aren't. So it's only Forest Green that could go above them this game week, and they win this game, then they'll have a 3-point gap on Carlisle, a 4-point gap on York, with a game in hand as well. And we speak about teams being able to break away. Rochdale are the side that potentially could go 6 points above, 6 or 7 points, 6 points above Carlisle at the moment, and 7 points above York and Forest Green. So for me, you look at Rochdale, and this is a huge game for them if they can get the victory. And I don't see any reason why they can't in this fixture, to be honest.
No, completely agree. A good game for the National League as well. I think anyone who likes non-league football or National League football this is definitely one to watch, and be interested to see whether Rochdale can take advantage of the other teams not playing and take that outright lead for a little bit.
I think that more or less wraps up the predictions. Please remember to like and subscribe, everyone. It genuinely does go a long way if you can do that. And if you'd like to become a channel member, it is just £2.99 a month. You get early access to interviews that we actually do. Of course, we've just recorded, it's a good time to plug this, we've just recorded an interview with York City manager Stuart Maynard. That is now available on YouTube to everyone. But if you were a channel member, you got 1 or 2 days early access. We've also got another interview, and I'm not disclosing it on here yet. We've got another interview planned for Monday night that we'll be recording then, and will be out later on in the week. You will get early access if you are a channel member as well, and it is just £2.99 a month. You get a custom emoji for the live chat, and you're supporting the channel further, so I do really appreciate that. Paul, as always, it's been a pleasure to do the predictions with yourself.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, good luck to all those teams that are playing in the FA Cup. Hope they get to the third round and get one of the big boys and make a bit of money and get a bit of exposure for the club and the players. And those that are in National League action, good luck to your teams as well. Enjoy your games, safe travels, and hopefully, next Thursday, I'll have clawed a few points back, Luke.
Hopefully, you never know. You might be in an FA Cup third round draw if you can get through Grimsby. But best of luck to all the National League sides who are competing in the FA Cup this weekend. Also, a massive thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. We do genuinely appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.